It's Tuesday, the 10th of September. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Long summer days are pretty much gone. It's getting darker earlier, and you can tell a new season is upon us. Today on the show, we're digging into what's ready to harvest, what we can still plant, and looking ahead to planning for next year. The lines are open, folks. Yeah, here's a post from a guest from what I saw on social media earlier. Fall is a great time to plant, transplant, and even build a new garden. Give us a call with your gardening challenges, successes for 2024, and plans for 2025. So that is from horticulturist Tim Walsh from Memorial University's Botanical Garden. Folks, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Yeah, it's a great time of year. You know, it feels. We were chatting before the show. It kind of feels like there's been a shift in just a seasonal shift almost. You know, even though officially it's not the last day of summer, I think until Friday.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, something like that. So let's bleed it out until it's actually over, but it does feel fallish, and it's just because school's started and all those.
It's
kinds
a different change of pace.
Yeah.
Also, I think I mean there was a steamier day earlier the week, but with humidity, but. My bedroom window's been closed a little bit more.
Yeah.
This is the difference, right?
That's right.
Summertime, windows open, and you get all those. Noises sometimes of what drives by your house, and now the window's closed and it's less bothersome, which is nice.
That's right, yeah. But you also, with the window open, you get those little breezes.
The breeze is
move
great.
the curtains every now and again. It reminds you that it's still summer, but there's definitely a shift. But I don't find that that too much of a downer because, of course, September, October, beautiful months.
Stew season.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're approaching comfort food, plus with the harvest. Speaking of which,
absolutely.
Thanks for the onions.
Yeah. I dropped by my. I have a vegetable garden in the allotment garden, the Jim McSheffrey garden on Mount Sire Road. Fantastic place there for people to grow their own food, and they you rent out a space there, and the rental fees go to the Brophy Centre over and off Bell's Turn on the east end of St. John's, and they're a great organisation there. And so they offer some generous space up there for individuals who want to grow their own food. And there's allotment gardens, of course, all over the city and all over the island. There's a lot of municipalities in general where people don't necessarily have the space within their own backyards to allot for growing vegetables. And these allotment gardens are great because what's nice about them is that you are growing vegetables with a bunch of other people who are doing exactly the same thing. And so you learn a lot from other people. They learn from you. You share some ideas. You share some harvest. Maybe I have, in this case, lots of onions, so I brought you in some. And somebody else might have another crop, lots of carrots, and my onions maybe didn't do so my carrots didn't do so well this year. So there's that kind of like a little barter system kind of thing that's going on. So it's great fun.
I love the community aspect of this type of stuff, right? In a time of talking about food security, but also growing community and the importance of interacting and all. Like, I mean, there's so much there that it's just great. So, folks, if you've been experimenting with one of these little plots, right, in your community, feel free to give us an update on that too, right? 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Before, I've got a bunch of questions, and I haven't even looked at the call sheet yet, but what I want to ask this now before it's like 2 minutes before the end of the show. I'm like, I didn't ask yet. What's up at the Botanical Garden?
Yeah, so we are switching into that kind of fall mode, but still there's lots of regular things happening. So we have a nature taught program, and it's a real fun. I really enjoy seeing it happen, and I'm not a part of it, but our education staff are, and it's where very young kids, like preschoolers, will come in with their parents, and they'll walk through the garden and down to the pond and feed the ducks and tell stories and that sort of thing. So it's really kind of fun to see those little ones. I call them, new gardeners coming through, and that's running up again this Friday, for instance, and it runs at 9 a.m. and another one at 10:45. So if there's any young parents out there or parents with young children, come on up for that. and that runs for the next 5 weeks. So that's great. And there's a bug walk this coming Saturday, the 14th, with Nature NL, and that's from 10 to 12, and that's a free event. So just come on up, and you'll actually walk through with people from Nature NL, and they'll help find, identify all kinds of bugs on everything, and they're all out there, of course. So that's kind of a little fun, kind of a almost like a scavenger hunt for insects and things. So that's fun. And dog days. We don't generally permit dogs to come through the garden for obvious reasons, but we do allow them on certain days. And so we have allotted, I think it's 4 or 5 days throughout the whole season where people can come and bring their leashed dog with them. And bring their poop bags, of course, too.
Yeah, of course.
But it's a really fun and really safe, because all the dogs remain on leash, and it's a really good opportunity for people to come into a brand new environment with their dog and introduce them to other people and to other dogs as well. So that's happening on the 22nd of September from 1 to 4. So yeah, still lots and the garden itself is just beautiful.
Nice.
It's a great time to actually be in the garden, I find. There's something about the fall. Spring is that really exciting time. It's been a long winter. You can't wait to get out there. You can't wait to do work. You can't wait to build and plan and all that. Summer is that time where we're kind of sitting back a little bit, but we're also still busy, because summer is a busy time, and we're visiting, we've got family, we've got vacations, all that sort of thing. I find that the fall is a time to literally just sit back on your heels and stroll gently, quietly. The garden is really quiet this time of year. Generally, I think just nature time. We talked about before the show about we're thinking about going into winter now. So that's kind of slow. I won't call it a slide, because that makes it sound like it's kind of out of control. And we still have lots of control, but it's that slow, gentle move from the spring and the fall, the summer, the fall into winter. And so people are foraging now a lot more, harvesting vegetables like the onions I brought into you. People are picking a lot of berries now, thinking about preserving food going through the winter. And so we're at the beginning of that stage now, and it feels really good. It's a real gentle. The air seems crisper and cleaner and cooler.
Totally.
And there's less mosquitoes and that sort of thing.
You can really the smell change in the air.
It does.
With
Absolutely.
a bit of temperature and the smell change, and then this time of season, it's when folks rediscover their ovens, right?
Exactly.
After season grilling and stuff, you're like, oh wait, it is now okay to have the heat in this thing turned on in the house, and I'm not going to, and also for like the slow cooker crock pot type situation, or also with Instant Pots. But like it's all these different types of foods that sometimes, like with the heat in summer, you're like, I'm just going to have a salad.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
As opposed to wanting that nice, beautiful smell of something cooking for a few hours in your home.
Yeah, and if you've grown some of that material that you're going to be cooking, then that's so much better, right? You know, the fresh vegetables that are now coming into harvest. You know, the potatoes are coming up now, and the carrots and the turnips and the cabbages, and they're all starting to mature now to the point of being harvested, and you get those in your pot now, and it's just amazing. It's incredible.
Yesterday at work, Francesca Swan, one of the producer for On the Go, was walking by, and I was like, she made tea, and the smell was really, really familiar, and it was because it was lemon thyme tea from her own lemon thyme plant, right? So I got one of those in the back, and I was like, I've never made tea. This is a great idea. So just dried it and just makes tea, and you can do it you can just snip it and make tea too. But it's just such a nice, again, especially this move into fall, you've got that type of a thing there, and it's just such an aromatic type of a thing to have in your home morning, or whenever you want to drink tea.
I agree. It's just a great time, and so I think my challenge to listeners is to get out there and start appreciating that a little bit more, because we tend to move indoors, and there's really no reason to just yet. And it's triggered by school starting. You know, everybody's back in school. University's filled with students, and the K-12 system is in full bore now. Everybody's moving indoors. But, you know, you really need to remind yourself to give yourself that pleasure of being outdoors. Because there will be a time when it's going to be more challenging to be outdoors. There's going to be a time when the weather is not great. And while that's not necessarily an excuse, you know that old adage, there's no bad weather, it's just bad clothing. But it's still more difficult to get yourself out there when the weather is worse. And so while it's still beautiful, while it's still fresh, and get out there and enjoy that. And it's still a great time to do work in your garden. Actually, it's a really fantastic, yeah. And it's a great time to build a new garden. For instance, it's a good time to design and build a new garden. You may not, and you can still plant. We had a really great plant sale. Our friends at the garden had a great plant sale on Saturday at the Botanical Garden.
Good.
Yeah. Lots of people showed up and to show wonderful support, and they went away with fantastic plants. And it's perfect time to plant those now, because the thing about, we might think that in nature things are starting to slow down, but really it's the soil temperatures that really dictate growth in plants. And so the soil temperatures are still really warm. Mm-hmm. And so if you put new plants in the ground right now, they still have ample time to grow strong, healthy root systems that will then take those plants into the winter dormancy. And so now's a really great time. And it's also because the temperatures are not extreme like they were, even just a short time ago. Then out there, digging a garden, you're not subject to getting overheated as much, physically, because the temperatures are just so amenable to that. So
you don't blink and all of a sudden, oh gosh, I've got a sunburn. Like it's I mean, there's still UV rays and the sunscreen, all that stuff, but it's just not, it's different than
absolutely
during the heat of summer.
Yeah, I taught a composting class on the weekend as well, and backyard composting, and so it's all geared towards helping people compost more successfully, because everybody knows the concept of composting, but there are a few things that you can do to make it work better, and some things that you can avoid so that you don't have. The biggest challenge with composting is rats, of course, and everybody has them from time to time. And I always say to the students who come to the class that if you believe your composter is the reason why there's rats in your neighborhood, then you're being unkind to yourself, because they're just everywhere anyways, especially in larger cities. They just are. But we talked about all that and ways around that. But now is a really great time to harvest that compost that has been decomposing all throughout the summer, because then you harvest that compost, you use it now, or you can even bag it up and use it next year. But what that does is it empties your compost bin going into the longer fall and winter, because in the wintertime our composters tend to stop. They slow down and almost stop, especially in the deep winter, because a compost has to be a very large mound in order to maintain a core temperature. Our smaller composters tend to slow down. And so if you're going into the winter with an already full compost, then you can see how this is going to get overwhelming, and it's just, you just won't have anywhere to put it in a short time. So if you harvest that compost now that's ready to use, then that frees up a lot of space within your compost bins and allows you a lot more space to put it in there throughout the winter.
You're listening to The Signal. It is Gardening Day. Tim Walsh from Memorial University's Botanical Garden is here. If you want to join this discussion, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. The Signal at cbc.ca is the email, and you can text us, 709-327-8206. We've got Paul on the line from St. John's. Hi, Paul.
Good afternoon, Adam. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Question for Tim around linden trees. I have several growing on my property out of town, and one is in the center of my septic field. It's a beautiful tree, but I notice their roots tend to go along the surface, because in other parts of my lawn I've had to top up with soil and put sods over because they came up. Should I be concerned?
Well, it's never a good idea, Paul, to have a large tree growing on a septic field, unfortunately. And they all have, some of them are a little bit more aggressive. Some of the larger trees are a little bit more aggressive than others, like maples, for instance. Maples are notorious for roots that go in all directions and penetrate just about anything.
And poplars.
And poplars are another one too, Poplars are I have a bit of a challenge myself with poplars on my property. And willow is another one, because willow tends to like its roots to be wet, and so it will actually seek out wet spots in your area, and kind of once a root gets there, then that root will branch out in that particular area. Lindens are, by their nature, they're just a big tree, so they want to become a big tree, so they're going to have a large root system regardless. And so it's not, I will say that it's not great. And I'm not going to be the person to say you must, but you definitely are thinking about it, and I think you know what I'm thinking.
Yes.
And if there's any opportunity at all to change, well, there's only two things that can change here, and is that you either move the tree or you move your septic field. And I would say that, or just take down the tree altogether. Because what'll happen, Paul, is that it probably will eventually invade your distribution line, and that's going to interfere with, obviously, water leaving your septic tank.
Yeah. Now, and I planted everything because it was a gravel pit when we developed it. So
right. Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
And I have moved the linden like when it was about 4 years old.
Right.
And it suffered the first year, but it rebounded. But this one is way beyond moving.
It's beyond moving now. Yeah.
So my wife is listening at home. So
yeah, I mean there's some limited ways that you can kind of literally cut back on the root system, by cutting down into the ground, so that, because not deep down, because you don't want to impact on your septic field itself, but you can literally sever those roots that go way off and have that ability to go far and wide. But it also then impacts on the ability for the root system to support the top growth, right? So it's almost like you're restricting the root growth. But that's a bit of a challenge because you really don't know where the roots are going. There's probably a few of them, like you said, that are close to the surface that you've already buried. But there are others that you will probably never see that are going in all directions. So
how about an oak tree? Does that just have one big taproot?
They will have a taproot, but they'll also have other horizontal roots as well. Any tree that wants to grow very large, like a big specimen tree like that, it's really not advisable to have it near a septic at all. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the only other option for you, if your property is large enough that you can plant those trees, a little further away and enjoy them in a different location on your property.
I know I've planted hundreds and hundreds of trees, and they're all doing well. But this one is I planted in the center, just kind of have everything symmetrical. But now it's time for it to go. So
yeah. Well, I don't have.
And unfortunately, we don't worry about as much, though, right?
No, that's right.
More superficial.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, they do not have near as strong a root system, and they are more just underneath the surface, and they don't penetrate deep down like some of these others do.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
All right, got a project for the weekend.
You do, yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for your advice.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, listen, one more other question before I go.
Yeah.
I noticed on the weekend coming down out of a birch tree, it looked like spruce budworms, like coming down like snow.
Right. Yeah. So there's several caterpillars that have been feeding on a lot of deciduous material, and so what that means is that now they're coming down, they're going through their next next stage of metamorphosis. So they generally come down from the tree, and then they'll find some place to just kind of morph into the moth stage, which is likely what it is, and then the moth will emerge. They'll mate. They'll lay eggs. The eggs will remain on the tree or on the bark until next year when they'll hatch and kind of repeat the process. And a lot of trees.
My best work of not making sure all of them made it to next year.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, and that's the challenge, isn't it? It's a bit tough because there's a lot of them, and it's really surprising when you think, we don't often realize what's happening, within nature. We just kind of, because we only see these insects when they're in their, like you're seeing them as a caterpillar or as an adult moth. But what you don't see is that egg that is there and has the ability to be, and usually they're attached to like the bark somewhere in the crotch of a branch or something like that. And they have that ability to stay there all winter long. It's pretty incredible when you think about how that's capable of doing that, and through frosts and freeze-thaw cycles. And it's not until the temperatures are perfect for them next year when they actually hatch and become this tiny little larva that's really even too small to see, and at that point it starts to move around the tree and it's timed with the leaf flush as well, so that they immediately have food to eat. But at that point they're eating so little that you don't actually see them. You don't see the damage, and it's not till they get more mature and mid to late season that you realize, oh yeah, there's a lot of them there, and It's a bit of a challenge, but generally you don't see that. Like generally, a lot of that can happen, and it does happen in nature, anyways. And it happens, and it does its thing, and it doesn't necessarily negatively impact on the overall health of the tree. The tree is
I haven't seen any damage to the tree, so I was surprised when all these things were coming at me. So,
yeah.
All right. Okay. Anyway, thank you. Great show.
Great.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too. Bye. Yeah, when you've got that aesthetic plan for your property and then you're looking at the reality of it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, right? It's, we don't have to think about that too much in the city because it's a septic system in a municipal system that takes it all away from the house and all the pipes are solid.
Yeah.
With distribution lines in septic fields, there are actually lines that come out of the tank, and there's usually 3 or 5 of them or whatever, and they go off in great lengths, and they're sitting on a bed of crushed stone that allows that water that comes off, because the solids stay in the tank and the water is distributed to these lines and it seeps down through the ground very gently. But those lines by design are filled with perforations to allow that water to come out.
Mm-hmm. Which is just,
it's a great opportunity.
Chum in the water for root sharks.
Exactly, yeah. So the roots can penetrate those lines very easily. Yeah.
If it's Gardening Day on the Signal, folks, Tim Walsh is here if you want to join the discussion. So anything from garden updates, right? Let us know how you've done for this season, some successes or things that were less than successful. Also, if you've got questions for tips, questions about planning for next year, because the great thing about gardening, there's always planning to be done, especially this time of year, looking ahead for next year. So 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails, thesignal@cbc.ca. We've got an email here from Sheila. Subject: small onions. My red onions are smaller than in other years. Stalks are still very green. Is it too late to feed them? And if not, what should I feed them? Thanks.
Yeah, it's too late now. The onions are, and I brought you in some onions there, and the onions, you can see how the foliage is starting to die back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's triggered by the air temperatures, really. Right. And so they've done their thing now, and they're starting to go into a dormancy. And if I was to leave those onions in the ground, onions are interesting in that they could have the ability to overwinter in the ground and then start to grow again next year. But they wouldn't really grow very well next year, because what they'd do immediately is flower, and then it's the plant's way of regenerating itself. So we don't let them go into the second season. But the point is that they're slowing down now, and so fertilizing them now would not really have that much of an effect. The one thing that I would suggest to Sheila is to think about the soil itself. And that she really probably needs to get that soil upgraded. Usually small vegetables is often a result of poor soil nutrition and organic matter, poor soil structure generally. And so the one thing about vegetables is that they're an annual crop. And so they do everything in one season, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. Like onions are either started from seed or they're started from sets, which are the little tiny bulbs that you buy in the springtime, and usually buy them from a nursery or a box store, and they're in a little onion bag, and you plunk those in the ground and they become the onions that you eat in the fall. Or you grow them from seed, or whether it's a bean or a pea or a cabbage or a turnip, whatever it is, it all starts from a seed in the spring. And you harvest this thing at the end of one season. So it's pretty intensive growing. And that plant needs to have everything that it needs in the soil in order to do that, along with good soil moisture and that sort of thing, and weeding and all those kind of general tasks that you need in order to grow a healthy crop. And usually when things are small, it's a result of the soil not having enough of something. And usually it's a nutrition thing. And oftentimes that nutrition can be the best way, one of the best ways anyways, to get that nutrition is by adding organic matter. Yeah. So it's compost. It's some sort of organic absorbent material, soil amendment. That you put into the soil. And often, our gardens generally in Newfoundland have been given that organic matter through horse manure, cow manure, sheep manure, those types of things, through kelp, and then they get nutrition from that. But they also would have traditionally gotten nutrition from capelin, for instance, which would have been put on the beds and buried mid-season, that sort of thing. all of that's what it's doing is feeding the soil the organic matter and the nutrition that it needs. Now, we can't always put kelp on our beds, and especially in some areas because there are some odors, especially in cities. It may attract rodents and maybe cats and that sort of thing. So you might want to think about fertilizing just regular granular fertilizer. We talk about it here all the time, some 6-12-12 fertilizer. Add those on a regular basis, because each year the plants are pulling those nutrients from the ground.
So you got to get them back in.
Yeah, so you have to put them back in.
So then at this point in the fall, right, so Sheila is looking at her red onions smaller than another year. She'll harvest those, right? And they're smaller than normal, fine. Yeah. What is the step then from now looking into next spring before planting again for whether it's the granular fertilizer or the organic matter, what should she do?
So it's more of a spring job, really. Yeah. Because anything that you put on there now in terms of nutrition, it has the tendency to get flushed out of the soil by next year. Because we do get a lot of rain between the end of fall and the beginning of the growing season next year, rain and snow. And so you get a lot of water passing through the soil.
And it just empties everything out,
right? Yeah, it just drains it away. It dilutes it, and it gets pushed through the soil or runs off or whatever. Yeah. So, but it's something for Sheila to think about for next year, is to be prepared next year to get out there in that garden, to dig it over in the springtime. If she's got some organic matter to add to it, that would be great. Because the one thing about adding fertilizer, you have to have something in the soil to hold on to it. Yeah. And if you've got sandy, gravelly soil, no matter what you put on there, it's only there for the short term. It's going to flush through that grainy soil very quickly. So you really need to have organic matter. And that's where the organic matter comes in, whether it's compost, whether that's peat moss, something that's going to absorb and hang on to whatever nutrition you put in there, so that when the roots move through the soil and start developing, they're going to have that there and accessible to them. So that's what it's about. It's about building the soil structure by adding the organic matter to the existing soil, and then it's about making sure that the fertilizer is there. That organic matter will hang on to it, and then the plants will grow through that.
Yeah, that's why, some of the garden centers selling, there's certain mixes that you can get.
Yes,
that's a little bit of peat moss. Yeah. So it's not your topsoil, right? But it's made for augmenting it.
Exactly, yeah. And if you have great topsoil, that's great. Very few people have that. Yeah. But if you have it, great. And topsoil is great. If you think about what topsoil is, it's literally the top soil that's been harvested off of a natural, let's say it's a natural space. Let's say a developer moved in to develop a housing development in an area. What they'll generally do is take down the trees first, and then they'll scrape off that topsoil and put that aside and screen that, and that's often what's sold. Once you get down below that topsoil, then you're getting into more mineral heavy soils underneath that, and then you're getting into the more rocky areas, which is not that great for growing in. And if you've ever been out in the woods and a tree is blown down, you'll see that root ball is not really a ball. It's more, in Newfoundland, it's generally more this kind of flat a collection of roots that have been growing along in that topsoil, not going down below because it's too rocky down there. Because that's where all the good stuff, it's in the top. So the topsoil, it's got that name for that reason. And that's because over years of leaf litter falling to the ground and decomposing and insects moving in there and doing all that sort of thing, that it's built up that level of organic matter, and that's where all the food is for plants in general.
Yeah, I just, from walking around some of the ponds here in the city, especially after previous years of windstorms, or you get a hurricane coming through, and afterwards you see a tree that's toppled and it just kind of rips, you get that flat reach out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Almost like, putting the palm of your hand down.
Exactly.
Right? And then if that was kind of lightly covered in dirt and ripping that over.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Let's go back to the lines. We've got, so folks, if you want to join the conversation with Tim Walsh and I for Gardening Day, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Yvonne Feltham is on the line from Glovertown. How you doing?
Good. Cooler.
Cooler, yes.
After yesterday, it rained all day. Now it's getting cooler. Good to hear about, you said about prepare soil, topsoil. So this year, now my garden is going well, and I have a happy garden. But the question is, I do some repair the house, and our carpenter took the chip block out So I was told the garbage. He said, this one good for the garden because when he worked in Toronto, some people come pick up the old chip block and put in the garden. They said it's good for the garden because lime, have some lime there. I don't know if it's a good idea, so I want to try, but I will ask you a question first. And the second question is, because I dug a lot my lawn, and I make the pathway around the garden. I put the gravel, the gravel, the stone, on top. But I had a lot of, sod, the soil take out from the garden. I lay out in the end of garden. Usually I check it, just take a soil, and then I throw away the weed.
Right.
But it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
But I get the idea. I make the box, the new box for the garden. So I just put that one upside down, like the inside down, and lay on top. Mm-hmm. Is it a good idea?
Yeah. So absolutely. So when you're making a new garden, it goes back to what Adam and I were just talking about with building up that organic matter. And basically with sods, and you're right, sometimes you can shake off the topsoil that's attached to the roots, but it is a lot of work. It doesn't want to let go. No. I've spent a lot of time there banging it against the back of a fork and trying to get the soil to pass through and then put the top in the compost bin. But I have also built raised vegetable beds where you build a box and you sit it on a lawn, but I'll often lift up the grass and turn it upside down inside the box. And what that does is it decomposes over time, and it becomes organic matter to feed the plants. But the thing is that it has to be buried fairly deep. It doesn't have to be down, several feet, but it has to be down deep enough so that it's not going to be able. Because what's going to happen is that when you turn it upside down, it's going to try and grow again. And even if you bury it with a little bit of soil, it could actually turn and grow up through that small amount of soil. So you just have to make sure that you bury it deep enough. Like it has to be underneath at least 6 inches of soil, and more would be even better. So usually at the bottom of a bed or bottom of a raised bed, it's perfectly fine, and it wouldn't have the ability to push up through all that soil. So that's certainly something to consider there. In terms of using gyprock for a lime alternative, I would stay away from that. Yeah, gypsum is a different product. It may have that ability to some degree to change the pH in the soil, but it's probably going to stay in the soil for a lot longer period of time. It's not going to dissolve the same way that horticultural limestone has been formulated to dissolve, because the horticultural limestone is formulated to dissolve in water very quickly. So the minute it gets exposed to organic or wet soil, it will immediately dissolve and move into the soil and start to do its work by changing the pH in the soil and make the soil.
That's good to know, because I haven't looked yet. I wait until Tuesday, ask you a question.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So I will talk to the dump.
Good approach, Yvonne. Wait till Tuesday. Ask the questions on the signal for gardening day.
And then, sorry, again, I just want to mention this year, my sunflower, the tall one I used to have last year, they're not good at all. So I had a lot of teddy bear sunflower. It's beautiful. They're not tall, but I miss the big sunflower.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. I was impressed coming into the CBC here. There's a couple of really big sunflowers out there.
I don't know who's in charge of that thing out there, because it surely isn't me, but they're really nice.
They are very
on the
nice.
way in, so I don't know how that happened.
And they're not tall stems, but the flowers themselves are huge.
Yeah.
And Yvonne mentioned a variety called teddy bear, which is a shorter, smaller sunflower head, but it produces multiple flowers and a shorter stem, and it's really, really nice. And if you live in, we all live in windy areas, but if you have especially windy areas, some of these shorter varieties of sunflowers are really, really good for that.
Here's an email in from Denise. Let me see. Hi, Adam and Tim. Question regarding grass. I have a good-sized area in my backyard that had to be dug up recently, and I'm wondering if it is too late within the next week or two to spread grass seed here. It's a fairly sunny area. If it's not too late, is there anything in particular I need to do with the soil? It seems to be a pretty decent soil that's been filled back in this area. Any tips on tending to it? And this is a Clarenville-based question.
Yeah, and it's actually a really great time. We don't often recommend starting a whole lot from seed this time of year because it is going into the fall. But grass is a little different because grass prefers cooler and moist conditions. And so in the summertime, actually, a lot of our grasses will go dormant or semi-dormant. So it's not as big of a deal here in Newfoundland, but if you visit other really hot areas in any part of the world, really, but if you think about North America and the southern Ontario parts and down into the States, they have a big challenge with grass in the summertime because it basically looks like it's dead because it goes completely dormant and it just sits there. It's fine. It's what grasses do. They go dormant during the dry periods, and then when the rains start again in the fall, they kick in and they start to grow again. So fall is actually a really great time to grow grass. If you're going to grow them from seed, sooner rather than later, because you want to get that seed in there, you want to get it germinated, you want to get a roots established and move into that soil before it starts to go dormant for winter. The other really quick way, of course, is to put sod on there, and the sod is an instant lawn, and that's grown by a sod producer and in rolls, and you just kind of roll it out like carpet, and then it starts to grow really well. So that's another option, but growing sod, putting sod in an area in a lawn that's been damaged is a little more challenging because then you get level changes and things like that because the sod has got, a couple of inch thick and you have to sort of figure out, well, now I have to take away some of the soil in order to get it down level with all the rest. It's a bit of a challenge. So get some seed on there. Absolutely, there's things to do. So if Denise feels that the soil is in good shape, it may look good. Doesn't mean that it has what it needs. However, if our grass was growing fine prior to that, then it probably is pretty good. But it's not a bad idea to get some fertilizer into there. And again, the fertilizer this time of year is not something that's going to create a huge amount of green growth because at this point you want to stimulate that root development. So she's going to have to look for a lawn fertilizer that is higher in phosphorus or that middle number because that's what's going to encourage root development. And then put that on there first and also put some lime on there at the recommended rate and rake that in, tamp it down, and then get some seed on there, and find a local supplier of seed, find a nursery who's able to talk to her about a good seed mix based on what's already there. The one challenge generally with our lawns is that if they've been there for a long period of time, then it tends to be a lot of grasses that have would have probably been wild had it not been mowed. And then all of a sudden you're coming in with this perfect Kentucky bluegrass mix and it all grows well. And you look out there and you'll be able to see that track that's been dug up for years.
Yeah.
So it takes a while for then those grass species to blend again. So it's really important for her to think about that. Think about what's already growing there. Maybe incorporate some clover into her seed mix because more than likely there's clover growing in her lawn that she's been tending to anyways, and that will help things to blend a little bit better. Get everything on there. Tamp it down very gently so that the seed is making good contact with the soil, and then water it. Get the water to it right away. It's going to need that water in order to get that germination. And then don't allow it to dry out. So she may be watering a couple of times a week, depending on the weather. If we have a good rain, you don't have to water, obviously. And yeah, that's all she needs to do. But it's a really great time to do it. Get at it sooner rather than later, for sure.
And speaking of sooner, I'm just looking at the Clarenville weather. You got 20 degrees tomorrow, chance of showers, then mix of sun and cloud, 20 degrees Thursday, 21 degrees, mix of sun and cloud on Friday. Yeah. And then it kind of drops off a bit to 14 with chances of showers over the weekend and 11 on Sunday. So the next few days.
Yeah. Oh. And even those 11-degree temperatures are still great for grass. Grass will grow right up until... down, I should say, until probably 5 and 6 degrees.
Beauty.
So, that's why fall is a really great time. Yeah, and the thing about seeding a lawn is that the little seedlings, if you think about each individual seed grain or seed capsule, when that germinates, that cannot dry out at that point because it's got a tiny little root system. And if that dries out at that point, then it often will kill off that individual little plant. What you want is for all those little seeds to be successful, and then they'll all start to grow together and their roots will mat together, and you'll have a green lawn in no time.
Kind of fantastic to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Folks who want to join the chat, Gardening Day. I'm Adam Walsh. Tim Walsh is here. No relation. This is The Signal, Gardening Day. 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us 709-327-8206. The Signal at cbc.ca. Marlene is on the line from Portugal Cove. How you doing?
Hi, Tim. Hi, Adam.
Hi.
Hi, Marlene.
I'm not looking for a solution to this because I don't think there is, but I'm just wondering if you can tell me what the problem might be. My house is built like in the middle of a beautiful patch of boreal forest, and I have dozens of shrubs that I call mountain holly.
Yes.
And I've never seen this before. I've been here 22 years, and all the leaves have turned brown and shriveled up. I don't know if you've seen this at botanical gardens or not, but do you think it was due to our hot, dry summer?
Yeah,
or
I
do
do.
you know if there's some kind of virus or pest that's going around that's attacking the mountain holly?
I think it's the dry summer. We've been seeing a lot of that on a lot of tree species, especially in shrubs, where they've gone through a really super long period of no moisture whatsoever. And it's really difficult for trees especially with wide leaves like our deciduous material to overcome that. There's always a bit of a problem with that in horse chestnuts, for instance, which is not a native tree, but it's an ornamental tree, and it gets quite large, and it's usually used as a foundational planting in city landscapes. They always succumb to that to some degree, but this year it's even more so than ever. And a lot of those horse chestnuts now, their leaves are just really shriveled up, and they're never going to recover this year. Fortunately for the horse chestnuts, and it's the same for the mountain holly, which, by the way, Marlene, is one of my most favorite forest shrubs. It's got the most beautiful bark ever.
Yeah.
And it's got
and
these
shape too.
Yeah,
I love
and shape. Yeah.
The branches go in. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't grow straight like a lot of trees. It's really kind of characteristic, kind of bendy, kind of stems, and it almost looks like it's covered. It's almost the bark is almost like you would see a rock covered in lichen. The way the patterns are on the bark itself, it's just got this really lovely patterns, blotches of grays and browns and things. Really spectacular. And then it's got red berries like all hollies do. And it has separate male and female plants as well. So you need them both in order for the female to have fruit. And the fruit are a velvety red, orangey red fruit that are just spectacular. But a lot of the deciduous trees are dropping leaves a little prematurely, and you'll see it, especially birches. We're seeing a lot of them dropping leaves already, and it is a result of that really dry period. It's a really stressful time for plants when we go through those dry periods. Yeah, and it is kind of it's a new thing for them too, if you think about it, and from the perspective of the climate change that we're experiencing. Our trees and our forests, our natural growing areas and our built spaces are going through times now in most recent years that they've never experienced before. Super long periods of drought in the middle of summer. We've always had, if you think about your memories as children, yeah, we had hot summers, but they were never to this extreme. And so now our plants are having to adapt. And one of the ways that plants will adapt is that they will start to drop their leaves because they can't support them. And so you're starting to see that now. So
do you think, well, I mean, they look dead, but do you think they'll come back next year?
Yes, I do. They will. I won't say definitely because that would be silly of me to make that assumption. But they do have that ability to go through into a sort of an early dormancy, and then they will respring from the stored energy in their root system and in their stems.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good because, as I say, they're all throughout the whole big area of boreal forest where I am here. So it's, like I said at the beginning, I'm not looking for a solution because I can't possibly go around and
that's right, yeah.
water them or spray them if there was some kind of pest or virus or something.
Yeah, because the only other thing that could possibly be a problem, but if there is, I haven't heard of anybody mentioning it about mountain holly. But what often happens, especially in a year like this year, with our really wet, cool spring that we had, that seemed to go on forever. Oftentimes what happens after a wet, cool spring is that it encourages a lot of fungal problems throughout the rest of the season. And the conditions are perfect for those fungal spores to reproduce. And so the only way we could confirm whether it's a fungal problem is to get some samples of them and actually look at them under a microscope and see if we can find some fungal fruiting bodies in there. So you've piqued my curiosity, so I'm going to look at the botanical garden because we do have mountain holly growing in our trails there. So I'm definitely going to go back to that at some point this week and see if there's anything else going on there. And I hopefully I can confirm that it's just the growing conditions of this year.
Oh, well, that would be great if you could let me know if you discover anything, any cause for this.
Yeah. And this is Marlene Creets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marlene, you've got the most amazing property in there. I was fortunate enough to visit it once a long time ago, and I'm so lucky,
and I'm an artist, and I use this place for all my subject matter, for all of my artwork, and I do guided walks here. Maybe some listeners have come on some of these guided walks. Yeah.
You're very fortunate there. That's for sure. Yeah, great work.
Well, thanks, Marlene. Thanks,
all right, Marlene. So I'll know how to contact you. That's great. I'll let you know what I find out.
Oh, great. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, great.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, we've got one more caller, but we've got a couple of. I've got some texts on my phone that I'm going to read too, and we've got a couple of texts to the CBC text line, and there's a couple of emails. So we'll whip through a couple of things. One is plant sale message for the Signal today. Hi, Adam. It's Patricia. The Newfoundland Horticultural Society is having our annual fall plant sale this Saturday morning, September 14, 9:30 to 11:30, Government House grounds, Military Road. Left side parking lot just inside the main gates. If it rains Saturday, we will have the sale on Sunday at the same time. Thanks for that's Patricia there. So there you go, folks. More plant sales. Also, we've got lots of tomatoes still growing outdoors in raised beds and buckets. And this is from a friend of the show, Dave. Check out these pictures he just sent in. Anyways, it's little tomatoes still growing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, those are beautiful.
It's tomato season.
Yeah. It's that time now, it's like the lettuce season in the spring where you're just waiting to eat something fresh, and then all of a sudden you got too much lettuce.
Feast, folks.
Yeah. So now it's the tomato season. It's great.
Quick questions. When are dogberries ripe for picking? I want to make jelly. That's not from me. That's from some texting.
Yeah. So dogberry jelly is cool. And whenever the berries themselves are soft, so you'll just have to get out there and
squish them,
fondle the berries a little bit, and see what you get. Yeah, but they're starting to color up now. They're starting to look quite nice.
The dogberry days of summer, as I like to say.
There you go.
Can I still plant cilantro seed outside?
It's a bit late for that, yeah. Generally, if you're going to try and get a second crop, you would have had to have started those seeds long before now. If you have a greenhouse, it's different. Start them and they'll be protected by the greenhouse a little bit longer. Garlic
planting, when?
End of this month and into the beginning of October. I planted garlic last year in December, and I harvested it perfectly. So it's any time, mid September onward.
Yeah, once frost is starting to
when you're starting to get cooler nights, especially.
Is this the time of year? Is this time of year good for taking a cutting from a crab or cherry tree and starting it elsewhere? And what is the best soil for an indoor geranium?
So it's too late for vegetative propagation of shrubs now for outdoors, unless you've got, like at the Botanical Garden, we've got a greenhouse that's heated all year long, and we do that sort of work. But if you're trying to do it at home, you would have had to have taken those cuttings back in the early August. End of July. And what was your second question?
Best soil for indoor geraniums?
Any potting soil, really. Like a pro-mix type potting soil. What's commonly referred to as a soil-less mix, which is generally a peat-based soil that has perlite in it, which is the white things that you see, little white bits in the sand, and the perlite actually gives it drainage. And so if you're buying a store-bought version of that, then it's also been pH balanced so that it's not too acidic and that sort of thing.
That's good to go. And best soil for outdoors with all perennial plants?
Well, if you don't have any soil at all, start from a local supplier of like a triple mix or something like that, which is topsoil, compost of some sort, and usually a little bit of drainage. And they've also added limestone to that too. So again, our soils in Newfoundland are generally very acidic. And so you really need to balance that pH in the soil. So that's why we use lime to bring down, or actually to bring up that pH, because acidic soils have a low number on the pH scale. pH scale is from 0 to 12, or 14, 7 being neutral. And that's kind of where we want most soils to be in order to grow generally plants that are not from Newfoundland, which is all of our vegetables and all of our flowering plants as well. But there's a lot of them. There's some of them that you can kind of get away with the lower pH. It's difficult to maintain that pH too because of soil leaching from year to year from all of our rains. So that's why it's an annual thing. So you generally lime your soils on an annual basis for best results, and that goes for your lawn too.
And it's easy to find those triple mixes if you go to your local garden stores, shops, centers. That's the word. Let's go to the phones. We got Chris on the line. Probably the last call for today, given the time. Hi, in CBS. Hi, Chris.
Hi. How are you guys?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad. I got a couple of questions for Tim there.
Perfect.
Sure.
Tim, I planted a couple of pear trees 2 years ago, and I was wondering, should I prune them the fall or wait till the spring?
Oh, spring is best, Chris, yeah. And so when it comes to pruning, are you pruning them because they're getting too big for you, or what would be your reason for pruning them?
No, they're not getting too big, but I got some branches there that are not going away.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So do that in the spring. Yeah. And that's right. And so the main reason for pruning is number one is something like that where the branches are growing oddly, or any that are dead or diseased. Get rid of those, or if they're crossed over and rubbing up against each other, so you'll end up opening up some bark. So that spring is always best, though, Chris, for sure.
What about a spray program? Should I be spraying those starting next year? Copper spray or something?
Oh, like for a fungicide or something like that?
Yes.
Only if you're seeing problems with the trees, of course. Like if you haven't really experienced any fungal problems in them, then there's really no need to spray, really.
Well, I've had a bit of black into the leaves and that. Okay. Would that be that?
Yeah, it could very well be some sort of a fungal problem of some sort. Difficult for me to say for sure without seeing it, but if it's only a little bit, though, it may not be necessary because those sprays generally require a couple of applications during the year in order to control that. And if it is a spray that you feel it's necessary to spray, the first spray should be very early in the spring, just as the buds are breaking, and then a couple of weeks after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, one more question now about garlic.
Okay.
I planted my garlic yesterday, and I usually plant it early every year.
Yeah.
Would it be okay to give it a liquid fertilizer now to try to boost the roots?
I'd be a little reluctant because you really don't want to stimulate too much growth, right? The roots are going to grow anyways. Once they're exposed to moisture, like you can stick a clove of garlic in a glass of water and it'll grow roots out the bottom because there's enough energy in that clove to do that.
Man, I just leave them in my fridge and they grow roots in the Tupperware container. Yeah. I was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be for eating. So,
That's right, yeah. You have to get at it quick. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't put any liquid feed. Some folks, if you only have a small amount, like to add a little bit of bone meal or something like that to there, because the bone meal again is that level of phosphorus that's going to stimulate root development. But even if you, it's a good. And the thing about garlic and like most vegetable soils, we always talk about augmenting the soil in the springtime to kind of prepare the bed for planting. That's not something you can do with garlic because you've already planted it. So now you've already planted yours now, but maybe you could think about even just top dressing with a little bit of organic matter, and over the months now and into the spring and over the winter, that organic matter will be brought down into the soil, and that'll give you a little bit of extra nutrition and a little bit of organic matter too. So I wouldn't put too much liquid fertilizer on there now because you don't want to stimulate growth to the point of where the stem starts to grow and it shoots up through the ground. because that would not be good for it.
All right, Chris, we got to run because we're coming up against the clock.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks for the calls.
Great. All the best now.
I got 30 seconds. Bye. Cheers. I got 30 seconds. Two quick questions. Not one flower in the lilac tree this year. Many leaves turned brown at the tip. Just dryness. That's from Elaine.
Yeah, dryness. Lilacs also have a leaf miner. They can have a leaf miner as well, which is a little insect. Not much you can do about that. Flowers are generally a result of the previous year. So if you had a lot of flowers last year, you sometimes will have a year where there's not many flowers. The only solution there is after it finishes flowering to get out there and cut off those dead flowers, and then it doesn't produce seed, and there next year it'll flower a little bit more.
Denise with a garden, quick question on the grass. Is clover part of the mix when I purchase grass seed, or do I buy this separately?
You can get a mix with clover, but you can also buy clover separately. So talk to your supplier and see what a good rate is for the amount of clover.
And last question. What can people still plant through this fall?
Anything that's already in a pot. Get out there and plant it, yeah. And some of the things that are starting to go dormant, perennials especially, you can dig those up, separate them, and plant them individually.
Excellent. Thanks for this.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
All right, that's it for Gardening Day. Tomorrow, it's another seasonal type show, Newfoundland Quarterly Autumn Edition, from steamers to shipwrecks. We'll talk about the ships that ruled our shores. Joan Sullivan and Issue contributors will be here to tell us all about it. Thanks for listening.